What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another one of our game recaps. This will be for December 10th. The first game we're going to talk about is the Bucs and the Falcons. The Bucs beat them 29-25. Baker Mayfield was 14-29, 144 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He also had 3 carries for 3 yards and a rushing touchdown. This is really solid touchdown production. Obviously, the yards weren't there. The completion percentage wasn't there, but the touchdown saved him here. Honestly, I think Baker Mayfield's a little bit hurt right now. He has a history of playing through injuries also, even when he's like super injured, kind of like the Derek Carr status of yesterday, where Baker Mayfield can rack up these injuries and he'll still play through them, even if it hampers him. So I think that is why the completion percentage and the yards weren't there, but it's great to see him at least make up for it with the touchdown production here. He's just, he remains a good streaming quarterback, but a streaming quarterback nonetheless. Rachaad White was awesome. 25 carries, 102 yards. He also had 2 catches for 33 yards and a touchdown. This is just great stuff. You got to play Rachaad White every week. He's been one of the most consistent players in fantasy this year. Chase Edmonds is the primary backup. He had 8 carries for 40 yards. He also had 2 carries for 18 yards. He's not going to be an ad unless something were to happen to Rachaad White. But if something were to happen to Rachaad White, he would absolutely be a priority because it seems like they're set on this system where they're just going to feed one running back a whole bunch. Rachaad White, he does have his limitations as far as efficiency is concerned, but he gets so much volume and he gets so much thrown to him in the passing game where you got to play him every single week. Maybe next year he's going to be a little bit overrated because of this production, but we'll deal with that then. Right now, let's just ride this wave because he is playing amazing. Trey Palmer also had a carry for 3 yards, the rookie from Nebraska. Chris Godwin, 5 catches, 53 yards on 11 targets. We saw his wife complain on social media about how the team was using him. We figured that he could get used in this game a little bit more because it seemed like he was due. A marquee receiver like this, A.J. Terrell is going to be on Mike Evans. Maybe it'll open things up for Chris Godwin, and it absolutely did in this game. Take a look at the defense that the Bucs are facing when you play Mike Evans or Chris Godwin. If they have like a top flight corner and not a whole lot after that, Chris Godwin can really eat in the slot in those situations because Mike Evans, in a perfect game, he's going to be the guy who gets all the targets and all the catches. But Chris Godwin is still a very viable option. He's going to give you some value as an underneath guy, even if he doesn't always get you a touchdown or rack up a ton of yards like that. The catches enough are going to be worth it, at least in most games. Cade Otton, he had 2 catches for 16 yards and a receiving touchdown. Another one of those streaming tight ends. I don't necessarily think he's someone you want to have in your lineup every single week. David Moore had a catch for 11 yards. Mike Evans, just the 1 catch for 8 yards and 6 targets. Don't get too discouraged by this. He's been playing amazing this whole week. I think you can just throw away this game. But do keep in mind these games like Atlanta where they have A.J. Terrell and especially the Saints where they have Lattimore, he's going to be limited to a degree. Lattimore, it's amazing like how much he shuts him down. But with A.J. Terrell too, him coming on as much as he has the last couple of years, it might be a situation like New Orleans where Mike Evans gets shut down by Terrell and Chris Godwin eats. That's what usually happens with the Saints too. So keep an eye out on that as we go forward with the Bucs. Desmond Ridder for the Falcons was 26 of 40, 347 yards, a touchdown and an interception. He also had 4 carries, 15 yards, and a rushing touchdown. I still wouldn't go because we saw Desmond Ridder. He struggled throughout this year. He's had these little burst games like this one where he has 347 yards and a rushing touchdown. This is awesome. I just don't think it's going to be reliable week to week because it's going to be hard to predict these huge breakout games from Desmond Ridder. I would leave him on the wire in most situations outside of a super deep, super flex sort of league. But in normal leagues, leave Desmond Ridder on the wire. He could easily get you 2 points next game right after this, even if the matchup is great. I still wouldn't trust him. Tyler Allgeier, 9 carries, 40 yards. He also did not record any receiving work. So same old stuff with Tyler Allgeier. Leave him on the wire. Bijan Robinson, 10 carries, 34 yards. He had a rushing touchdown. The receiving work is what we'd love to see, though. 5 catches, 54 yards on 7 targets. Tied for number 2 on the team in targets. Love to see it. He's been really coming on as a receiver here lately. At least like as far as volume is concerned in the grand scheme of how this team divides targets. Bijan has been getting more of that lately. Keep playing him every single week, even if he has a down game on the ground like he did in this one. Even though he had that rushing touchdown, his receiving work is really going to help him out most weeks. Cordarrelle Patterson, 3 carries for 7 yards. Did not have any receiving work. He, obviously leave him on the wire. At least we know for sure now, if the Falcons put anybody at that joker spot, he's probably not going to be used very much. So really frustrating there from a predictability standpoint. But at least it's getting kind of predictable where the best players are getting the most yards. Drake London, 10 catches, 172 yards on 11 targets. This is absolutely monster stuff. He is the number 1 receiver for this team. So if they have a matchup where the team they're facing just can't cover receivers, like Tampa has had issues with this year, that's when you play Drake London, because at least he's going to get targets. This is his best game of the season right here. Before this, he hasn't broken 20 fantasy points, but this is obviously a monster game. I don't think he's someone you want to play every single week, because it's not like this team has just been able to throw the ball, prolifically whatsoever this year. But at least we know he's number 1 guy, and that's more that we can say than a lot of receivers out there. So hang on to Drake London, a matchup-heavy play, in my opinion. Kyle Pitts was great, too. 3 catches, 57 yards, and a touchdown. Only 6 targets. Jonnu Smith out-targeted him, but Jonnu only had 4 catches for 27 yards. I would leave Jonnu on the wire. Kyle Pitts should be the guy that you are starting. We've seen these last few games. They're focusing this attack on Pitts, London, and Bijan like we have been asking all season. I think those are the 3 guys that you need to focus on as far as the majority of fantasy lineups out there. Cordarrelle Hodge had a catch for 18 yards on 2 targets. Michael Pruitt, 2 catches for 15 yards on 2 targets. Interesting that they're using 3 tight ends out there. And Matt Collins, just the 1 catch for 4 yards. And Scotty Miller not able to haul in any of his 3 targets. Next game, the Colts lost to the Bengals dramatically, 34-14. Gardner Minshew, he was okay, 26-39, 240 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. He also had 2 carries for 5 yards. This is okay, below expectation for sure. He's kind of in that Baker Mayfield sort of realm where you want to play him with the matchups, not someone you want to play every single week, Gardner Minshew. Zack Moss, 13 carries, 28 yards. He also had 4 catches for 28 yards on 8 targets. Part of me is starting to think that the beginning of this year where Zack Moss was really taking off, having just ridiculous production, top 5 running back in all of fantasy, that may have been a fluke. He was a throw-in piece in the Nyheim Hines trade from Buffalo. This isn't somebody who has blown away talent evaluators in the past. And him coming on like he did was a huge surprise, and lately he has been cooling down dramatically. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what the consensus is after this week, because to me, Zack Moss is obviously outside of the top 10, but we'll just have to wait to see what the consensus does as far as projections are concerned on different apps regarding Zack Moss, because make no mistake about it, he is the workhorse in this backfield, but I don't think we're going to see the huge numbers that he was putting up earlier in the season. Trey Sermon, 3 carries for 13 yards. He did not have any receiving work, so he is just mainly a name to keep an eye on. I wouldn't go adding him. Even though Zack Moss is struggling, I would leave Trey Sermon on the wire. Michael Pittman is amazing. You got to play him every single week, no matter the matchup. 8 catches, 95 yards on 11 targets. He was fantastic. Like I said, you got to play him no matter what the matchup is. He is a lineup lock. Will Mallory, 5 catches, 46 yards on 5 targets. He's more of a dynasty play. They've been switching their tight ends so much this year. Maybe Will Mallory getting some looks here is an indicator for how they're going to use him down the line, but I just wouldn't go thinking that Will Mallory is going to be this guy that we can play in fantasy the rest of the way because of this performance. Only 9.6 points for him, but still, this is a standout game in a group that doesn't really have a clear winner the whole season. So Kylan Granson would have been that winner. 2 catches, 17 yards on 4 targets only for him today. So just best to stay away from that tight end spot. Josh Downs, 3 catches, 32 yards on 3 targets. I think he is a drop. He's been really struggling here lately. Hold him in Dynasty, though, because he's still a very good receiver. He just hasn't had the production that he had earlier in the year. Alec Pierce, 2 catches for 22 yards on 3 targets. Another guy, just leave him on the wire. Mo Alley-Cox had a catch for 2 yards and a receiving touchdown. Drew Ogletree did not haul in either of his targets, and Tyler Goodson just had the 1 catch for -2. Jake Browning, he looks great. 18 to 24, 275 yards, 2 touchdowns, an interception. He also had 3 carries for 7 yards and another rushing touchdown. Awesome stuff. I think he's strongly in the streaming consideration. I don't know if I would trust him 100% as my lock-it-in quarterback for the playoffs, but still, his last 2 games have been really impressive. The completion percentage has been really impressive at him, but I would just play him with the matchups more. At least let's get another game in to make sure that this isn't a fluke, because this has been 2 back-to-back games from a backup that have been absolutely stellar. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets any starter consideration from other teams moving forward if he continues this play. A.J. McCarron came in and he threw a pass for -1 yard. So Jake Browning were to go down, that is going to be the guy. Joe Mixon, 21 carries, 79 yards, and a rushing touchdown. He also had 3 catches for 46 yards. Keep playing him every single week. More of a high floor guy because he's not really one to get you super high efficiency on the ground. But Chase Brown is shown or at least given the Bengals reason to consider giving the ball to someone other than Joe Mixon. He's not a threat to take away Mixon's job as the workhorse, but he could spell him a little bit. 8 carries, 25 yards. He was also the leading receiver with 3 catches, 80 yards, and a receiving touchdown. So really good stuff here from Chase Brown. I wouldn't go adding him just yet, but a phenomenal dynasty play for the future because he's had a really impressive back-to-back stretch of games here. T. Higgins, 2 catches for 72 yards on 4 targets. I think he is a drop. Even with Jake Brown playing as well as he has, I think he's more concerned with Jamar Chase at this point. Because you see here, T. Higgins and Jamar Chase had the same number of targets, but still, T. Higgins can't really get anything going other than that 46-yard catch that really boosted up his yards numbers. So I would drop T. Higgins. Joe Mixon, 3 catches for 46 yards. Jamar Chase, just the 3 catches for 29 yards on 4 targets. He's not the lock-it-in, no-brainer. You got to play him no matter what the matchup is with Jake Browning, but he's still strongly in starter consideration. Just a little bit more matchup heavy, I think, than we were ready to admit when Jake Browning first got there. Tyler Boyd, I think he can be dropped with Higgins. 2 catches, 23 yards on 3 targets. Tanner Hudson is an interesting name if you need a tight end streamer. 2 catches for 21 yards in a receiving touchdown on 3 targets. But still, Drew Samples there, 2 catches for 4 yards on 2 targets. Not a guarantee that he's going to get all the tight end usage, but if you're going to get somebody from this team, it's going to be Tanner Hudson. Mitchell Wilcox also had a catch for 0, and Travion Williams, the backup running back, also had a catch for -1. Next game, the Browns and the Jags. The Browns beat the Jags 31-27. Trevor Lawrence went out there with a litany of injuries. The high ankle sprain that he suffered less than a week before this game, 28 of 50, 257 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He also had 3 carries for 11 yards. This is a Jameis Winston game. Playing on a high ankle sprain, that's a lot to ask of someone. We all remember Patrick Mahomes last playoffs where he had the high ankle sprain, and it was such a drag for him to play from game to game. It's just weird that in week 14, Trevor Lawrence is still ready to go play on a high ankle sprain, not even a week removed from it. Didn't really make sense. They lost this game. Probably wasn't the best idea, but just something to keep in mind going forward. That's probably what a lot of, if this team starts to really struggle down the stretch here, that's what they're probably going to blame it on, is Trevor Lawrence's high ankle sprain. Travis Etienne, 14 carries, 35 yards, and a rushing touchdown. He also had 4 catches for 37 yards. Keep playing him every week. The efficiency hasn't been there lately, but still, he's the clear workhorse in this backfield. Dearness Johnson had 3 carries for 12 yards. He also had 2 catches for 16, so not really someone you want to consider unless something were to happen to Etienne. Evan Ingram was the leading receiver. He was amazing. 11 catches, 95 yards on 2 touchdowns. Or he had 2 touchdowns on 12 targets. So if they face a team where, the Browns were down Denzel Ward in this game, so they really only had one stud corner to follow Calvin Ridley around. And when you have a hurt quarterback, he's going to feel more tempted to dump it off to the tight end or to the back more. That's why you see the high Evan Ingram numbers here. That's why you see Travis Etienne getting 4 catches, tied with Calvin Ridley. Evan Ingram is going to be a really solid play throughout the fantasy playoffs because of this high ankle sprain that Trevor Lawrence has. And Trevor Lawrence likes throwing to tight ends anyway. So if you have Evan Ingram on your team, congratulations. Just a really, might be you'll hear the term league winner thrown around a whole bunch, but Evan Ingram could be that for sure. Calvin Ridley, only 4 catches for 53 yards. 13 targets, though. That is ridiculous stuff. He's still solidly in play consideration week to week. Don't get too down on him because he didn't get you 10 yards in this one. Zay Jones, 5 catches for 29 yards on 14 targets. Another guy. Add him if he's on your wire. If they have a good matchup, I think Zay Jones is a solid play, but I think not someone you want to lock into lineups, even though the opportunity has definitely come with those 14 targets. But, someone you want to shy away from playing at least next week. Give it a couple weeks first, or give it one more week along with this week before you start playing Zay Jones, because I'm just not ready to totally trust him. I think it's going to be mainly Ridley, Ingram, and Travis Etienne the rest of the way. Parker Washington had 2 catches for 27 yards and a receiving touchdown. He's going to get a lot of play because of Christian Kirk being out, but again, I think it's mainly going to be the 3 guys I talked about earlier, and then Zay Jones getting what's left after those 3 guys. And Dearness Johnson had the 2 catches for 16 yards. Joe Flacco, 26 of 45, 311 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. He also had 4 carries for -1 yards. He went back to the practice squad after they named him the starter for the rest of the season. It's so weird because a team could theoretically sign him off the practice squad, but then Joe Flacco's like, I don't want to play for another team besides the Browns, so he wouldn't sign with another team even if he was offered the chance. It's so weird. Why don't they just sign him to the active roster if he's their starting quarterback? We may never get a solid answer for the reasoning there. But still, Flacco's been really good. 26 of 45, 311 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception is really good stuff. This is Deshaun Watson had some good games there, but Joe Flacco being a really viable quarterback option to keep that strong defense afloat. The Browns absolutely found something there. Jerome Ford, 12 carries, 51 yards. He also had the 5 catches for 31 yards on 6 targets. Really solid stuff. He's going to be the main receiving back, so his value is going to be buoyed by his receiving stats most weeks, which will give him a really solid floor. Kareem Hunt, 10 carries, 27 yards, and a rushing touchdown. He also had a catch for 3 yards. A very touchdown-dependent play Kareem Hunt is. I wouldn't go adding him based off of this. DTR came in, had a carry for 5 yards. Pierre Strong also had a carry for 0. David Njoku was amazing. 6 catches, 91 yards. 2 touchdowns, 8 targets. Great stuff. We were kind of worried about David Njoku with Joe Flacco because he didn't throw to him really at all last game. But here he is, just feeding him like crazy. Play David Njoku. If you have him as your every week start, it looks like it's going to be a really solid decision moving forward. Amari Cooper, 7 catches, 77 yards, 14 targets. Really surprising with Elijah Moore only getting 3 catches for 42 yards on 6 targets. Got to play Amari Cooper every week, especially with Flacco throwing it around like he is, targeting him at this rate. Even with Elijah Moore and David Njoku out there, got to play Amari Cooper every week. David Bell had a catch for 41 yards and a receiving touchdown. Cedric Tillman had 2 catches for 23 on 4 targets. And Jordan Akins, the backup tight end, had a catch for 3 yards. Next game, the Texans lost to the Jets big, 30-6. Just shocking stuff here. CJ Stroud, just you want to talk about a throwaway game? This is just a wild stat line. 10 of 23, 91 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. There was rain in this game. This defense is tough. They went down Nico Collins in the middle of this game, and Noah Brown didn't really step in and play very well. This was just a bad game. I expect there to be better days ahead. CJ Stroud is in concussion protocol, so that's going to be something to monitor going forward. Davis Mills came in because of that. He was 1 of 5 for 4 yards. If Davis Mills were to play next week, a severe downgrade to Texans receivers, but we'll talk about it more when we get to the receivers, but it just was a terrible, terrible day for the Houston passing attack. Devin Singletary was okay, though. 13 carries, 65 yards, and a rushing touchdown. He didn't record any receiving stats. He had the 3 targets because of the bad receiving day, but still. Interesting, when it looked like Dameon Pierce was taking over this backfield, Devin Singletary outcarried him by a mile, more than 3 times the amount of carries that Pierce had. So Dameon Pierce, a very safe drop, only 4 carries for 9 yards, and Dare Ogunbowale had 2 carries for 7 yards. Brevin Jordan really shined with Dalton Schultz out. 3 catches, 35 yards on 3 targets. He's definitely in consideration without Schultz, but if Schultz is coming back next game, very safe drop. Andrew Beck, the backup tight end, had a catch for 26 yards. Xavier Hutchinson, high snap rate. Him and Robert Woods had a high snap rate, but they didn't really get the looks that Mechie and Noah Brown had. Hutchinson was 2 of 15 on 3 targets. Robert Woods only had 1 catch for -2 yards. Both of those guys had 3 targets. Mechie had 1 catch for 6 yards on 5 targets. Noah Brown was 0 for 0 on 5 targets. So, it's going to be hard to kind of pitch anybody to get a Texan receiver after this game. If I had to order them based on, like, if Nico Collins were to go out, I would prioritize Noah Brown first because he's still getting the targets. Even though he has back-to-back zeros, that would still be the Texans receiver I'm targeting first. Then Robert Woods, then John Mechie would be my order. Mechie or Hutchinson, because Hutchinson is getting the snap rate now, but Mechie is getting the targets. I think overall, when I think about those guys as receiving prospects, back to their days in college, Xavier Hutchinson at Iowa State, John Mechie at Alabama. Mechie is a better receiver, so that's why I prioritize Mechie over Hutchinson. But who really knows? This offense has become quite the enigma here lately, with Noah Brown getting you zeros and Nico Collins going down. So keep an eye on Nico Collins. Before he went down, he had a catch for 13 yards. Dare Ogunbowale had a catch for 4. Robert Woods had the catch for -2, and Dameon Pierce just adding the 1 catch for -2. Zach Wilson, arguably the best game of his career. 27 of 36, 301 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He also had 3 carries for 12 yards. All the negative press probably helped him. The rain. Sometimes all that negativity in your face can kind of block out what you're deeply thinking, and you just kind of focus on the task at hand. Maybe that's what happened here with Zach Wilson. That's kind of what I'm thinking, because there was so much negativity, like legit negative reports about him not even wanting to play quarterback for the Jets anymore, even though they wanted to go back to him. But here he is, just responding in a huge way. So maybe Aaron Rodgers plays at the end of this year. We'll just have to see. Breece Hall, he was really good. 10 carries, 40 yards, but the 8 catches for 86 yards and a receiving touchdown is where he got all his value. Amazing stuff. Keep playing him as you normally would. A really solid every week sort of play. Dalvin Cook, he had the 7 catches for 13 yards and only the 1 catch for -5. He is still someone you want to leave on waiver wires. Xavier Gibson had a carry for 9 yards and a rushing touchdown. He also had a catch for 3 yards. Nick Bawden had a carry for 3. Garrett Wilson had a carry for 3. And Israel Abanikanda had 3 carries for -1. Another one of these games where, 7 guys had carries and 7 guys had catches. So not very often you see a game like this. Garrett Wilson, 9 catches, 108 yards on 14 targets. As long as Zach Wilson is in there, I think Garrett Wilson is a really solid floor. So keep playing Garrett Wilson every week. Tyler Conklin, another guy. If Zach Wilson is in there, I think he has a solid floor. 4 catches, 57 yards on 6 targets. That'll get it done as a tight end. Jeremy Ruckert, he had 3 catches for 37 yards on 3 targets. Randall Cobb had the receiving touchdown for 15 yards, but that was his only catch. And Dalvin Cook just had the 1 catch for -5. Really shocking result in that game. The next game is the Ravens and the Rams. The Ravens pulled this one out in overtime, 37-31. Ever since Kyron Williams got back, the Rams are getting a lot more competitive. Matthew Stafford, 23 of 41, 294 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions in the rain. 1 carry, -1 yards. Would love to see it. Keep playing Matthew Stafford as you normally would. A high-end waiver wire streaming sort of quarterback. Think top 15, low-end top 15 sort of quarterback. A step above Baker Mayfield, in my opinion, at this point. Kyren Williams, keep playing him every week. Doesn't matter what the matchup is. You got to do it. 25 carries, 114 yards. He also had 3 catches for -1 yard. Again, amazing stuff. 2 back-to-back tough matchups with the Browns and the Ravens, and he was able to be amazing both times. So doesn't matter what the matchup is. You got to play Kyren Williams. Royce Freeman, he had 3 carries for 9 yards. He's a very safe drop, and Puka Nacua had a carry for 6 as well. Cooper Kupp is back. 8 catches, 115 yards, and a receiving touchdown. He also had 10 targets. Amazing stuff. I think Cooper Kupp, you got to play him every single week. I saw some fantasy doctors suggest that Kupp was ramping his way back from the string of ankle injuries that he's had, and now he's coming into form. At least, a lot of them were suggesting this was going to be the game that he would come back, and he did. So keep an eye on that. I think if you have Cooper Kupp, you're playing him every week regardless of matchup because of his reputation coming into this year. He's had just amazing production with Matthew Stafford going back years. So I think you got to play Cooper Kupp, even though it has been tough. There were some weeks there earlier on where it was really tough, but I think these last couple of weeks have really shown that he's getting back into form. Puka Nacua, 5 catches, 84 yards, and 8 targets. Another guy, I think you got to play him every week. I think I would rather have Kupp than Nacua, but still, Nacua is a really solid play. Davis Allen, he's a really good dynasty play. 4 catches, 50 yards, and a touchdown on 5 targets. He was their 3rd tight end, but he's a rookie 5th-round pick, so I think if you're in dynasty formats, a really good guy to stash on your bench because Tyler Higbee's getting older. Maybe this is their replacement here. Demarcus Robinson had 3 catches for 46 yards and a touchdown on 10 targets. Amazing stuff as far as targets are concerned, but I do not think in a perfect world they're throwing 10 targets to Demarcus Robinson, especially when Tutu Atwell only has 1 target. I would just throw this game away from Demarcus Robinson. I do not think he's a priority ad. They want to work this offense through Kyren Williams, Cooper Kupp, and Puka Nacua. For the Ravens, Lamar Jackson, 24-43, 316 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. He was also the leading rusher, 11 carries for 70 yards. Got to play Lamar Jackson every single week. That's just what he does. 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, rushing for 70 yards. All in a day's work for Lamar. Just awesome stuff. Keaton Mitchell, leading rusher by a really good margin here. 9 carries, 54 yards. He also had a catch for 8 yards. Interesting that Gus Edwards had no receiving work whatsoever, and Keaton Mitchell outcarried him in a close game. So Keaton Mitchell, I think, is the back you want to play from this backfield. Gus Edwards, he's going to get touches. He's going to get work around the goal line. So think of him more like a Kareem Hunt sort of level, like very touchdown dependent is how I see Gus Edwards. Odell Beckham, 4 catches, 97 yards, and a touchdown on 10 targets. Make sure he is not on your wire. Make sure he is on a team in your league because he's been absolutely insane these last few weeks. And with Mark Andrews going out, this could really help out Odell. And coming down the stretch here, Odell can really do some special things. And Zay Flowers, also a guy. 6 catches, 60 yards, and a receiving touchdown. Love to see that. Love to see Isaiah Likely getting involved too. 5 catches, 83 yards, and a touchdown on 7 targets. All 3 of those guys are playable week to week. Nelson Aguilar, 5 catches, 32 yards, on 5 targets. Him and Rachaad Bateman. Bateman had 2 catches for 24 yards on 4 targets. I think those 2 guys only really have value if Odell or Zay were to get hurt. I would prioritize Bateman if that were to happen, but for now, stay away from those guys. The 3 guys you want are Odell, Likely, and Zay. Justice Hill, just the 1 catch for 12 yards. No carries for him in this one, and Keaton Mitchell had the 1 catch for 8 yards. Next game, Jared Goff and the Lions lost to the Bears in huge fashion, 28-13. The Bears are playing really well. I think Matt Eberflus is actually a really good coach. It looked miserable there at the beginning of the year, but he's turning it around. Ever since they got Montez Sweat, he's shown why he's naturally a defensive coach. Jared Goff, 20-35, 161 yards, a touchdown, 2 interceptions. He also had 1 carry for 0 yards. Miserable day for Jared Goff. I think he's more matchup dependent. And keep an eye out for these defenses that are coming on at the end of the year, like the Bears. Jahmyr Gibbs, 11 carries, 66 yards, and a rushing touchdown. He also had 3 catches for 16 yards. I would like to see him have more receiving work. There was a stretch of games there where he looked like the number 2 receiver in this offense. Him and Sam Laporta were tied behind Amon-Ra St. Brown. These last few games, he's kind of taken a back seat in that regard. I'd like to see that go up a little bit moving forward. David Montgomery, 10 catches, 66 yards. He also had 3 catches for 19 yards. Interesting that he had more yards than Jahmyr Gibbs. I do not think that's the way they want to do it. But David Montgomery and Gibbs are both really solid every week sort of plays. Jameson Williams, he is a gadget player, only 1 carry for 4 yards, and he didn't haul in his only target. Sam Laporta had a carry for 4 yards also. He had 2 catches for 23 yards on 6 targets. Not a good day for him. I think he's just a product of just a miserable day overall for the Lions passing offense. Josh Reynolds was the leading receiver, 3 catches for 44 yards and a receiving touchdown. Amon-Ra St. Brown, this is a huge disappointment. 3 catches for 21 yards on 9 targets. I think you throw this game away. It's Amon-Ra St. Brown. You got to play him every week regardless of matchup. This is just a huge dud. Sam Laporta, kind of similar thing. In that Evan Ingram sort of category where you want to play him every week, just kind of limit your expectations a little bit. Ingram might be passing him just a smidge. They're very close anyways, those 2 guys. Donovan Peoples-Jones had a catch for 17 yards on 1 target. Good to see him at least get that catch in. Khalif Raymond had 3 catches for 15 yards on 4 targets. Brock Wright, the tight end, had 2 catches for 6. And Jameson Williams was not able to haul in his only target. Justin Fields, 19 of 33, 223 yards, a passing touchdown. He was also the leading rusher with 12 carries, 58 yards, and a rushing touchdown. The rushing is why we play him every week. It gives us a really substantial floor that you don't find with other quarterbacks. So keep playing Justin Fields every single week. Deontay Foreman, the leading rusher here, 11 carries, 50 yards. He also had 2 catches for 22 yards. This backfield is going to transition a whole bunch. 1 week it's going to be this guy. The next week it's going to be Herbert. The other week it's going to be Roschon. Then it's going to be Deontay. I don't like, if you're going to add anybody, obviously you add Deontay because he's getting the volume here. But just keep in mind when you're playing him, there's going to be huge up and down waves with Deontay. I do not expect him to be the lock-it-in number 1 back moving forward for this team. I think it's going to be more, there's going to be a lot of in and out with those guys. DJ Moore, though, 3 carries, 20 yards, and a rushing touchdown. He also had 6 catches, 68 yards, and a receiving touchdown. Play him every single week. It doesn't matter what the matchup is. They are just figuring out ways to get DJ Moore the ball. They're making a strong effort to do that. Got to play him every week. Cole Kmet, 5 catches, 66 yards, and 7 targets. Another guy, really solid tight end option you're playing every week. Not like a Mark Andrews or a Travis Kelce, but right below that, really solid output from him. Darnell Mooney, 2 catches, 44 yards on 7 targets. You can leave him on the wire. Velus Jones had a catch for 11 yards. Tyler Scott had a catch for 11 yards as well. Mercedes Lewis had a catch for 4, and Kari Blasingame had a catch for -3. Next game, the Saints beat the crap out of the Panthers 28-6. Bryce Young was terrible, 13 of 36, 137 yards passing, 3 carries for 40 yards. Obviously, you're leading him on the wire, but not in a dynasty format. I think Bryce Young is going to get better than this rookie season. This rookie season is going to be terrible. It's been terrible. It's going to continue to be terrible. But down the line, he's going to get better. He's a better player than he's shown this season for sure. Wait till they get some legit pieces around him. I think he's going to be a good player. Chuba Hubbard, 23 carries, 87 yards. He also had 2 catches for 9 yards. Really solid every week sort of play with Chuba Hubbard. You want to play him with the matchups ideally, but still, this is really good. And Miles Sanders, 10 carries, 74 yards. No receiving work in this one, but still, really solid stuff from Miles Sanders. You'd love to see 7.4 yards per carry. I still wouldn't consider him a threat to Chuba, though. Amir Smith-Marset had a carry for 10 yards. Raheem Blackshear, the backup running back, had a carry for 4. And Johnny Hecker, the punter, had a carry for -11. How about Adam Thielen? 5 catches, 74 yards on 7 targets. He's in the playable discussion again. I wouldn't play him every single week, or at least lock him into that. But still, he's more playable now than he was this time last week for sure. DJ Chark, 2 catches, 26 yards, and 4 targets. Leave him on the wire. Jonathan Mingo, the leader in targets, but only 2 catches for 22 yards. He's going to be up and down, but I think he's going to have his moments here down the stretch. You can add him if your team is a little depleted, but I don't think he's necessarily a huge priority add. Raheem Blackshear had a catch for 4 yards. Tommy Tremble, the tight end, had a catch for 2. Steven Sullivan, 4 targets, didn't haul in any of them, and Mir Smith-Marset did not haul in his only target. Derek Carr, he looked terrible. 18 of 26, 119 yards, 2 touchdowns, an interception. He has so many injuries going on right now. I don't know why he still plays. They won this game, but it's almost despite Derek Carr in this one because 119 yards is not going to get it done most days unless you're playing a 1-11, now 1-12 Panthers team. Then you could throw for 119 yards and expect to win. Alvin Kamara, 12 carries, 56 yards, and a rushing touchdown. He also had 3 catches for negative 11 yards. This is the guy you want to play on the Saints. You know, this wasn't amazing from a receiving standpoint, but it's usually better than this. You keep playing him every week regardless of matchup. Jamal Williams getting this many carries, though, but it's probably a factor of them being ahead so much. 11 carries, 23 yards for him. He didn't haul in his only target, so leave him on the wire. And Jameis Winston came in. He had 2 carries for negative 2 yards there at the end. A.T. Perry, the leading receiver off of 1 catch. 1 catch, 44 yards. It was just that type of day. When your quarterback has 1,000 injuries, that's how it's going to be. Chris Olave, 4 catches, 28 yards. Thank God for that touchdown. It saved his day on 5 targets. He's going to be the only receiver you want to play from this team. It should be better 1 week further removed from this injury. Hopefully Jameis gets in there. That'll help out Chris Olave more, but we'll just have to see. It's just kind of rough with Derek Carr playing through all these injuries. Lynn Bowden, 4 catches for 24 yards on 4 targets. Jimmy Graham getting a receiving touchdown on 2 catches and 16 yards, 2 targets. Juwan Johnson, you can leave him on the wire, 2 catches for 10 yards. Foster Moreau, 2 catches for 8 yards. Interesting that all the tight ends had 2 catches there. And Alvin Kamara, just the 3 catches for negative 11 yards. Next game was super weird. How about the Vikings beating the Raiders 3-0? Nick Mullins, 9 of 13, 83 yards. No rushing production. Josh Dobbs, this is the big story though. 10 of 23, 63 yards, 5 carries, 21 yards rushing. It would not surprise me at all if they announced Nick Mullins as a starter next week. I think Josh Dobbs is a drop. It's been terrible these last couple weeks, and it doesn't seem like they're super committed to riding him out the rest of the season. So I think now we're kind of understanding why he went for so little at the trade deadline. You know, he just got there, but he had just got there with the Cardinals too, and he was able to pick that up. But he knew the OC there. I don't know what the OC situation is with the Vikings. It's just really weird. I think Nick Mullins is probably going to be the guy because they feel more comfortable in him, other than a guy who just got there, even though he did have that one game where he was amazing. Alexander Mattison, 10 carries, 66 yards. He did not haul in his only target. Very low upside play, like a high-ish floor, low upside is how I see Alexander Mattison. He's going to be super touchdown dependent. Ty Chandler, 12 carries for 35 yards. He had 3 catches for 7 yards as well. Maybe his receiving production starts to raise his value a little bit down the road, but as of right now, I wouldn't go adding any of these Viking running backs. CJ Ham, the fullback, had a carry for 7, and Kene Nwangwu had 2 carries for 3 yards. TJ Hawkinson was the leading receiver. He had 5 catches for 53 yards on 8 targets. You still got to play him every week. Backup quarterbacks love throwing to the tight end, so TJ should stay busy, even if they go to Nick Mullins. Justin Jefferson went out with another injury. 2 catches, 27 yards, 3 targets. It's a chest injury, maybe a rib fracture. He could be out a couple more weeks. It's just super disappointing for the number 1 overall. I think over the last 10 years, there hasn't been one consensus number 1 overall fantasy player who's played every game that season. So you just keep that in mind going forward. Justin Jefferson, hang on to him, obviously, because he could help you out later in the playoffs, but stay glued to the fantasy insiders or the NFL insiders Twitter accounts with updates on him, because if he's in, you got to play him. He's Justin Jefferson, but just horrible injury luck this season. Jordan Addison, 2 catches, 27 yards on 3 targets. He is a play only if Justin Jefferson is out. KJ Osborne had 4 catches for 15 yards on 7 targets. I think he is a drop. Jalen Naylor had 2 catches for 13 yards on 5 targets. Johnny Munt, the tight end, had a catch for 4. Brandon Powell didn't haul in his only target. Josh Oliver didn't haul in his only target either, as well as Alexander Madison. For the Raiders, Aiden O'Connell putting together these respectable completion percentage low yard games. 21 to 32, 171 yards, no touchdowns, and interception. He also had a carry for 2 yards. He's going to be a decent backup quarterback in the NFL for a long time, but I just don't see him as a long-term starter. They're probably going to be drafting a quarterback in the draft if I had to guess. Josh Jacobs, 13 carries, 34 yards. He also had 2 catches for 16 yards. I think you still got to play him every single week. The Vikings have a pretty solid run defense, so I think that's mainly for the limited production in this one. Amir Abdullah had a carry for 12 yards and 2 catches for 7. Weird that they're using those guys in the receiving game more than Jacobs. I think they ought to use Jacobs more there. Samir White had 2 carries for 8 yards. No receiving work for him, though. Devontae Adams, 7 catches, 53 yards on 10 targets. His upside is going to be limited because of Aiden O'Connell, but he's going to give you a really solid floor every week. So if you have him locked into your lineup, don't expect like the 40-point games that he has done in the past. It's going to be more like these 15-ish point games that we get from him rest of the season, I think. Hunter Renfrow getting more involved. 3 catches, 46 yards on 5 targets. I think he's an interesting dynasty stash, but I wouldn't go adding him other than that. Jacoby Myers, I think he's a drop. 5 catches, 25 yards, and 6 targets. He's going to be super up and down because they're going to prioritize Adams first, and the quarterback isn't great. Michael Mayer, he had a catch for 14 yards on 2 targets. I think he is a safe drop. Austin Hooper had a catch for 5. Greg Van Roten, no receptions, but 5 receiving yards. Very odd. And Trey Tucker did not haul in his only target for the rookie. The 49ers defeated the Seahawks 28-16. Drew Lock came in for the injured Geno Smith, 22 of 31, 269 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He also had 3 carries for 5 yards. He's an interesting play if they have a good matchup. Drew Lock, he's kind of like Jameis, where he'll throw the ball downfield regardless if a guy's open or not sometimes. So he can rack up yards like that, but he can also rack up interceptions, and he's not very good. So I wouldn't go playing him outside of like super favorable matchups. Zach Charbonnet out-carrying Kenneth Walker in this one. 9 carries, 44 yards for him. He also had a catch for 4. Ken Walker had 8 carries for 21 yards. He had 4 catches for 33 on 5 targets, though. Kind of the reverse of what we thought the rules would be, where Zach Charbonnet getting more receiving work, Ken Walker maybe getting it on the ground. No, it's totally flipped. So I would play these guys with a good matchup. I think both of them are considered. I would prioritize Walker, but just don't expect huge upside from either of them. Definitely don't lock them into your lineup because it's just kind of a weird situation right now. Don't really know what's going on with the division of carries there. Tyler Lockett was the leading receiver. He had 6 catches for 89 yards and 6 targets. DK Metcalf got kicked out of this game. It really opened things up for Lockett. Kind of like, Drew Lock is a deep ball thrower. Tyler Lockett loves running deep ball routes. So maybe there's something there with Drew Lock if he continues to play if Tyler Lockett gets these favorable matchups against teams that don't usually have great receiver lockdown abilities like the 49ers do. They can lock down quarterbacks and running backs and tight ends all day, but the receivers sometimes can eat. It really opened things up for Lockett here. I thought it would open things up for Metcalf more, but he decided to throw a fit. 2 catches, 52 yards. The receiving touchdown really saved him there, but I still think you got to play DK Metcalf every week, unless there's a suspension coming down the pike here. Noah Fant, 2 catches, 35 yards on 4 targets. You can leave him on the wire. Colby Parkinson had 2 catches for 28 and a touchdown. Jackson Smith and Jigba, he had 4 catches for 25 yards on 7 targets. If Drew Lock's in, I think he's a drop. Zach Charbonnet had the catch for 4, and Will Dissly just had the 1 catch for 3. Brock Purdy, got to play him every week. 19 of 27, 368 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception. He also had 2 carries for 7 yards. The weapons around him are too good. He's too good. He's good. He's really good. I think people are putting way too much stock in how good the weapons are around him. Yes, they are elite, and it's a big reason why this team is great. But Brock Purdy is still making the right decision. He's doing amazing things out there. Do not think less of Brock Purdy because the team around him is so great. He's doing exactly what you're supposed to do when you have a supporting cast like this. And that's more than a lot of quarterbacks can say. Definitely more than Trey Lance could say, which is why they got rid of him. And now they have Brock Purdy, who is absolutely tearing it up. So play Brock Purdy every single week. Christian McCaffrey, another guy. Got to play him every week. 16 carries, 145 yards. He also had a catch for 8. No touchdown here, but you got to play him regardless of matchup. Jordan Mason vultured that touchdown, 4 carries for 20 yards and a catch for 6. You can leave him on the wire. And Deebo Samuel had a monster day. He had a carry for 1 yard and a rushing touchdown. He also had 7 catches, 149 yards, and a receiving touchdown on 9 targets. Unreal stuff. Like, this is, if they have a suspect run defense, definitely play Deebo Samuel, because that seems to be where he can totally eat. Even if he doesn't have the rushing production, he still just has a way of going off against those teams. So keep playing Deebo Samuel every week. Brandon Ayuk, when they have a good receiving matchup, I think that's when Brandon Ayuk shines. 6 catches, 126 yards, and 9 targets. Great stuff from him today. George Kittle, 3 catches, 76 yards, and a receiving touchdown. Awesome stuff from him. You're playing him every week too. Just awesome stuff from the 49ers in this one. Jordan Mason, the catch for 6. Charlie Warner had a catch for 3. And Jawan Jennings did not haul in his only target. He's really only going to have value if Ayuk or Samuel misses. Next game, the Bills beat the Chiefs in dramatic fashion, 20-17. Josh Allen was 23 of 42, 233 yards, a touchdown, an interception. He also had 10 carries for 32 yards and a rushing touchdown. Got to play Josh Allen every week, regardless of matchup, because of that rushing production. And the YOLO ball, he can kind of play and rack up the yards and the touchdowns there too, even though it does get him some interceptions from time to time. James Cook, 10 carries, 58 yards. He also had 5 catches for 83 yards and a touchdown, the leading receiver by a mile. Got to play him every week. He's been amazing, the clear lead dog in this backfield. Ty Johnson had 5 carries for 19 yards. Maybe he's taking over for Latavius Murray. We'll just have to watch that going forward, because Murray had the 3 carries for 9 yards. Ty Johnson also had the 2 catches, and Murray just had the 1 for 21. Dawson Knox, 3 catches, 36 yards on 3 targets. Super frustrating. He definitely limits Kincaid, but Kincaid was still okay. 5 catches, 21 yards, 8 targets. They're still targeting Kincaid. He was second on the team in targets, but Knox taking away catches like this is definitely annoying. We got to kind of reconfigure where he is on the rankings. Deontay Hardy, he had a catch for 25 yards. Stephon Diggs, super disappointing. 4 catches, 24 yards on 11 targets. He'd be a huge buy low if the trade deadline hadn't passed, because this was a really bad matchup for him. It's kind of why I had him a little lower on rankings than most this week, but still super disappointing. But I think you got to play Stephon Diggs every single week. That's just the nature of having Stephon Diggs. Latavius Murray had the catch for 21. Khalil Shakir had a catch for 12. Trent Sherfield had the catch for 9. And Ty Johnson added the catch for 2. Gabe Davis did what Gabe Davis does. He's either going to get you 30 or 0. So playing Gabe Davis, you just got to know what you're in for. Don't think that, oh, this is definitely a Gabe Davis day, because as soon as it's definitely a Gabe Davis day, that's when it gets you 0. So he's just a total roll of the die, which can be useful in some spots. Patrick Mahomes, super disappointing. 25 of 43, 271 yards, a touchdown, an interception. He also had a carry for 8 yards. Got to kind of reconfigure where he is in the rankings too. It's just been a disappointing season from him. It stinks, because I drafted him as the first quarterback in one league, I know for sure. And it has not necessarily panned out whatsoever. So still think you got to play him every week because he's Patrick Mahomes, but it has not been good this year. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 11 carries, 39 yards. He also had 2 catches for 29. Really solid day without Isaiah Pacheco. We kind of see how this backfield is going to look if Pacheco starts to miss more time. Jarrett McKinnon, he was solid, though. 4 carries, 19 yards, a rushing touchdown. He also had 3 catches for 18 yards. I would still value McKinnon over Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but they're like right next to each other in the rankings. Kadarius Toney, he had 2 carries for 16 yards. Probably better that he stays in the backfield so he doesn't line up off sides. 3 catches for 25 yards for him on the day. Travis Kelce was the leading receiver. 6 catches, 83 yards, and 10 targets. Awesome stuff. Obviously, you're playing him every week. Rashee Rice looking like an every week sort of play too. 7 catches, 72 yards, and a receiving touchdown on 10 targets. Awesome stuff from him. Make sure he isn't on your wire. Marquez Valdes-Scantling had 2 catches for 22 yards. He's a very safe drop. Justin Watson, another safe drop, had a catch for 18 yards. Richie James had a catch for 4, and Sky Moore was not able to haul in his only target. Next game, the Broncos defeated the Chargers. You got to think Brandon Staley's going to get fired for sure, but if not, they're probably just waiting until the end of the season, I would think, at this point, because there's been so many opportunities to do it. They just haven't done it yet. But Broncos 24-7. Russell Wilson loves LA, 21 of 33, 224 yards, 2 touchdowns, an interception. He also had 6 carries for 5 yards. I think he has a piece of some businesses in the LA area. Manhattan Beach, Hermosa Beach sort of area, I think. So he really likes LA. If he ever is playing against the Rams or the Chargers, I definitely factor that in mind because he's going to be comfortable. He's going to give you a solid day. Not like a 400-yard sort of day, but respectable day. We'll take this. Javonte Williams, 17 carries, 66 yards, a rushing touchdown. He also had 3 catches for 25 yards. This was his first receiving touchdown of the entire year, which is shocking to me, but solid game from him. Keep playing him as you normally would. A really solid every single week sort of play. Samaje Perine was a little limited with an injury. 2 carries for 8 yards. 5 catches for 36 yards in this one. The second leading receiver. Still, I would leave him on wires. He's going to be super up and down. Jaleel McLaughlin, speaking of up and down, he's going to have 5 carries, 25 yards, and only the 1 catch for 7 yards. Another guy, very safe drop. And Michael Burton, the fullback, also had a carry for 2 yards. Courtland Sutton, looking like someone you got to play every week. 3 catches, 62 yards, and a receiving touchdown. He has a ton of touchdowns this year. He's just racking them up. Great stuff from him. Play him every week. If you're super loaded at receiver, I can see you being a little more choosy with the matchups. But outside of like super loaded situations, you're playing Courtland Sutton every week. Lucas Krull had a catch for 35. Adam Troutman had 2 catches for 19 and a touchdown. Jerry Jeudy, I think he is a safe drop. 2 catches for 16 yards. Lil Jordan Humphrey had a catch for 12. Marvin Mims had 2 catches for 11. And Michael Burton added a catch for 1. Justin Herbert, he might be out for the rest of the regular season with a broken finger. So, because it's on his throwing hand now, keep an eye out on that going forward. It doesn't look like he's going to play this week, but there's not any concrete information about a timetable yet. So, keep an eye out on the Insider's Twitter accounts for that. Easton Stick is going to be the quarterback for the foreseeable future. 13 to 24, 179 yards. He has a little bit more rushing production. Like, he didn't have any rushing production in this one, but he has the ability to rush if necessary. So, but having said that, I don't think it's enough to make him fantasy relevant. I would leave him on the wire. Austin Eckler, 10 carries, 51 yards, and a rushing touchdown. He also had 5 catches for 49. Good to see him get back into good graces because he had been really sucking there for a while. Isaiah Spiller getting 6 carries for 19 yards. Joshua Kelly having 3 carries for 6 yards. We thought Kelly could have a little bit more production here, but just not the game. Looks like they're still committed to Eckler. Maybe Spiller gets a look if something were to happen to Eckler, but I think Joshua Kelly is a very safe drop in most spots. Quentin Johnson was the leading receiver. 3 catches, 91 yards on 4 targets. I would still leave him on the wire. I just don't believe in Easton Stick's passing abilities enough to really go after anybody in this passing attack other than Keenan Allen. Keenan had 6 catches for 68 yards on 12 targets. Definitely, obviously, even if there's a quarterback change, someone you're playing every single week, regardless of matchup. Gerald Everett, 5 catches, 39 yards on 8 targets. He'd be an interesting stream if Easton Stick were to play. Donald Parham had a catch for 11 yards. Alec Erickson had a catch for 9. And Jalen Guyton, a very safe drop, had just the 1 catch for 8 yards on 1 target. Last game of the night, the Cowboys defeated the Eagles 33-13. Jalen Hurts, 18-27, 197 yards. He also had 5 carries for 30 yards. This is miserable stuff. They've had a really brutal stretch of like 4 games here where they've played some really awesome teams. I think this is a good time to have a lull right here, and you could really pick it back up come playoff time. I think that's going to be the trajectory they're trying to follow. But losing this big to a division foe, your biggest division foe too, is not good, especially if you guys have a tie in the standings at the end of the season to figure out who's going to be the division winner here. Dallas absolutely helped their case here. Going to be better days ahead for Jalen Hurts. You just got to play him every week. DeAndre Swift getting more involved. 11 carries, 39 yards. No receiving production in this one, but still good to see him at least lead the charge in the carries department. Little more matchup dependent than we were thinking at the beginning of this year, but still he's in the playable category. Not someone you want to lock in like we thought earlier, but definitely still in consideration. Kenneth Gainwell had 4 carries for 28 yards, and Boston Scott had 3 carries for 9. Not very many receivers got to touch the ball in this one, but A.J. Brown was great. 9 catches, 94 yards, 13 targets. Devontae Smith, also great. 5 catches, 73 yards, 10 targets. you're playing both of those guys every week, especially in a matchup where if the other team has a really good corner, kind of like the Buccaneers where Chris Godwin can shine if there's a corner to lock down Mike Evans. If there's a corner to lock down A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith can really shine too. So keep playing Devontae Smith, keep playing A.J. Brown, keep playing Dallas Goedert. His first game back from injury, he had 4 catches for 30 yards. And Olamide Zaccheaus had a catch for 28. Dak Prescott looked great. 24-39, 271 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He also had 3 carries for 11 yards. He's having a tremendous stretch here lately. Keep playing him every single week. Tony Pollard, tough matchup, but he had 16 carries, 59 yards. He also had 7 catches for 37 yards on 8 targets. Great stuff. Keep playing him every week. Rico Dowdle, 12 carries, 46 yards, and a rushing touchdown. He also had 1 catch for 6 yards. Good stuff from him, but I would leave him on the wire because Tony Pollard is the clear lead dog here. Kevontae Turpin had a carry for 22 yards, and Dak Prescott had the 3 for 11. How about Jake Ferguson leading the team in receiving? 5 catches, 72 yards on 8 targets. Great stuff, like Cole Kmet sort of level of tight end. Top 10, lower level of top 10, but still a really solid every single week sort of play. CeeDee Lamb, you got to play him every week regardless of matchup. 6 catches, 71 yards, and a receiving touchdown on 10 targets. Great stuff. Michael Gallup, I think you can still leave him on the wire. His production is going to be more up and down, him and Brandon Cooks. Gallup had 3 catches for 48 yards and a receiving touchdown on 5 targets. Brandon Cooks also had 5 targets, but just the 2 catches for 37 yards for him. Not necessarily, these two aren't necessarily guys you want to prioritize playing. Kevontae Turpin wasn't able to haul in his only target, and Jalen Tolbert was not able to haul in his only target. So that's going to do it for me, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, follow at We Are Drafting on Instagram. We'll have the Week 15 ads and drops up there. Week 15 rankings for each position. Check those out, and thank you again so much for watching.